Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Black Men with Purpose podcast. For those of you joining us for the first time, it's a pleasure to have you with us. This is a safe space where we share our thoughts on a multitude of topics in hopes of helping Black males, young and not so young, overcome obstacles and challenges that can be hindrances and to happiness, productivity, as well as success. We believe through our experiences, successes, and failures, we can have some conversations that might help other Black males in their respective journeys through this thing we call life. And on today's episode, our topic is staving off the victim mentality. We as Black men might not be responsible for what has happened to us, but we are responsible for overcoming it. Said another way, trauma may not be your fault, but healing is your responsibility. And we're going to have Brother Ray get us kicked off tonight.
All right, appreciate you, Doc. And this is, I'm not gonna say it's a tough topic. It is, but it's something I know we discuss all the time. And what bothers me is that, real quick, it seems like we always find a way to blame everybody else for when things go wrong instead of taking the responsibility for our own actions or lack thereof. And that's just something that really has to change because we are responsible for our own actions. If you're going to go commit a crime and I go with you and I know you're going to go commit a crime, well, whose fault is it? You for committing the crime or me for going with you and when we get busted? And at some point you have to stop blaming everybody else for your excuse my language, your piss poor decisions. And that's the problem that we seem to have, or a lot of Black men seem to have, that I've noticed, even in my age range or older. And that just needs to really change, and because it's a detriment to ourselves. But that's what I had just off the quick top off of my head. So I'll yield the floor to whoever may want to go next.
Appreciate you for getting us jumped off. And yeah, and the thing is, life isn't fair, right? I mean, no one ever said it would be, and anyone who said it would be, they lied to you. And listen, I get it, right? We've been victimized by capitalism, slavery, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, the prison industrial complex as a whole, to include a discriminatory criminal justice system, right? And so, we aren't all dealt the same cards. Hell, some people aren't dealt cards at all. And as Black men, as Black people, we don't start off with equal opportunities and resources. But we can either sit around and complain about it, or we can do something about it, right? I liken it to politics. One of the most annoying things for me is hearing someone constantly complaining about politics and politicians. But when you ask them what they're doing about it, their response is, "Oh, well, I vote," right? And some of them don't even do that. So don't sit around and complain, trying to ruin my day. If you're not doing something productive to make a change, to make a difference. I mean, truly productive, right? To affect change. And so while you can't necessarily change the hand you were dealt, you can certainly learn to play it masterfully. And so that's, those are my initial thoughts on it before we delve a little deeper into this thing.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. Uh, Victim mentality, uh, a learned behavior in individuals who believe they have no control over their lives because they think nothing they do will matter. And that's a mouthful there.
Yeah.
And you can look
Hmm.
back, as you mentioned, you know, uh, Kev, back to Jim Crow, back to people being forcibly, brought to this country, enslaved. And who knows what that would do to you? Who knows what it would do to us if we lived in that environment today? So, but I do agree that, so knowing the facts of all the things that transpired, you have to start looking at what you can do differently to change your circumstance. And and I think y'all both mentioned that. So, while we might not be able to control everything, As I've been told, we can always control the choices that we make if we want things to be different in our lives. So looking forward
Absolutely.
to getting into this. And with that,
Totally agree. I think I love the perspective that Brother Rob brought to it because, when we talk about victim mentality, a lot of times it is very bad choices. And I look forward to us chopping it up and kind of addressing that, but it is also a spectrum. Sometimes it's trauma based, sometimes it's based in circumstances that are truly outside of one's control. And I think we've all experienced it. We're all fathers, and we've all experienced it as leaders and as mentors. Is that sometimes when people have been repeatedly conditioned to feel as if they don't have a voice, sometimes it's just a matter of like I always think about a young man that I still mentor him. We still tight, but he's in his late 20s now. He's not a teen anymore. But when he was a teen, I could tell he was still trying to find his voice. And one of the things that I tried to make sure that I did was not be in correct mode or whatever. I just kind of allowed him to talk and feel his way around so that he could understand that he had the ability to these thoughts and to kind of figure out the world as he saw it from his perspective. And a lot of times, people don't have that freedom, and so that victim mentality comes from actual tragic events that are happening, and you almost can't blame them for feeling that way. And then in some cases, yeah, it's someone that's entitled. It feels like they've never had to handle this way or that way. So when things don't go their way, I, I'm not gonna get too deep into it, but I was laughing because there's a part of of our population who just think that they're supposed to win because they show up, and then when life hits them in the mouth and they realize that they actually got to compete and that they're not really that good at competing, all of a sudden they want to holler that they're victims. But y'all might know what I'm talking about, but we won't get into that. But definitely, I look forward to an opportunity to have these conversations about how the victim mentality rears its head and what we can do. Um, Obviously, some cases there's not much we can do, but there are ways that we can help and eliminate this stigma of the victim mentality. Even when you're limited in what you're able to do, you still don't have to
Absolutely.
see yourself as a victim.
No doubt.
you know, and I apologize if someone else was getting ready to say something, but one of the things, as I was thinking about this and looking into it, one of the things I came across was that, people with a victim mentality, while they might feel powerless and feel like they don't have any recourse, the one thing that jumped out to me, though, was that they also often lack accountability in their lives.
Yes. 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 Yes.
So when you think about it just
Absolutely.
from that lens alone, think about the number of people who you've known throughout your lives uh, that really had no one to hold them accountable, right? And I just think, back to I know my upbringing in my neighborhood. While I was, in the house doing my homework, all my friends were outside playing, because their mom was at her second or third job at that point,
Right.
right? So they had no one to hold them accountable to understand what a good choice looked like, to understand the importance of education and doing what
Yes.
you needed to do because I have to go and work to put food on the table. I mean, we knew latchkey kids before it was popular and cool, right? So
For
5 year
sure.
old latchkey kid.
Yeah,
Uh,
but with the one
I'm
thing that
trying to tell you.
you know, but I'm hoping that we can delve deeper into this, and for anyone that's listening to just really understand when they run across anyone in their lives, young or old at this point, but when they lack accountability, why you think having accountability partners is so cool now? I
yeah,
think because
yeah.
people recognize the importance of it, even as adults, to have someone that's going to check in on you. So that jumped out to me, and I just wanted to bring that up. I'll turn it over.
That's good
Well,
stuff.
let me hop in
Yeah.
real quick. Yeah, that was real good stuff, Rod. And when you talked about accountability, bruh, that I wrote some stuff down, and I swear you were reading my page. Um, I'm gonna talk about something that happened to me, because again, accountability is big. You guys know in my military career, I ended up getting demoted from master sergeant to tech sergeant, E7 to E6, and it happened because someone didn't do their job. However, it wasn't their fault. They didn't do their job, but it was my fault for not making sure that they did their job. So I had other folks. My father, in as the prime example, he was like, "Well, those so and so say they can't do that to you," and blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Dad, hold on, stop, time out. If nothing else, you taught me in my life to be accountable for my own actions, and my own actions were to trust someone to do their job instead of ensuring that they did their job. So ultimately, it's my fault. I have to look at where is my fault in this, and I am going to take responsibility for it. Now, with that accountability, one thing that we have always noticed that you folks have a choice. I had a choice at that point in time. I could have said, you know what, I'm done. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm not going to excel anymore. I'm just going to ride my time out. I'm going to retire and I'm going to bounce. Or I can do what I did, and I continue to bust my behind, work even harder than what I was working before. And at the first available opportunity to get my stripe back, my commander that busted me ensured that I got my stripe back, because all he wanted to know is, how's my guy doing. When he asked my supervisor, how's my guy doing, and he was able to go back and say he's busting his behind and he deserves another opportunity, and it was given to me. Again, we all know people who have folded. We all know people who have folded. I made that choice not to fold. I made the choice to excel, and that's where we have a lot of officers that they refuse to excel. They just say, okay, you know what? That's the hand that's dealt to me. I'm done. I just want out. I refuse to go out like that. I was and unfortunately, well, I'm not gonna say unfortunately. I wish that more of our folks would have that mentality, instead of saying, well, you know what, I'm the victim here, and I'm just going to check out. We do have other options, and like I said, we are responsibility for our own actions. We can't overcome it. That was a negative in my life that impacted me, and everybody that knew me saw it, because there was no way I could hide it. There was no way I could hide it. They saw that I got demoted. I stood my behind up in front of thousands of people, introduced myself with my rank of tech sergeant, and wore it proudly. And then 2 years later, I had my master sergeant back, because that was the first available opportunity for me to get it back. You can do it if you make the choice. We all have choices. And again, whether it's good or bad, if there's something negative to you, you do not have to live with that negativity. You can make a positive and do better for yourself. And before I start the rambling, I'm gonna yield the floor, fellas.
Now I'll jump in because I think that was a great example, because we all remember that. And I was a younger troop that was watching how Ray handled that. And obviously, we want to definitely hold space in our heart and respect for people. Because when we talk about responsibility and fault and staving off the victim mentality, we never want to be so high and mighty and delve into respectability politics so much that we don't recognize that there are some people that are so tragically impacted by circumstances outside their control that sometimes it drives them to a point. I know people personally that I just know that for them just to be here, let alone functional, was the win because of what they had been through was so horrific that I couldn't imagine surviving through it. Like I got so many friends who've lost children, and that's just something I can't fathom. And it's so respecting that, but I love the example that Ray used because um, Dr. Eric Thomas always said, well, he has a statement that he says it might not have been your fault, but there's still something that is your responsibility. An example he uses if somebody comes and pushes you, punches you, and knocks you down on the ground, that's terrible. And it's not your fault that somebody came and knocked you on the ground. But if we come back a week later and you still laying on the ground, that's on you to get up after you've been knocked down. And it's
Yeah.
important what Ray did. And the example that I use a lot of times is that Ray didn't have the power or the ability or the authority to just get his strike back. But the things that he could control, he did. He showed up.
Right.
He I mean, like I said, when I remember what we used to say all the time is, I don't know who does that job, but I'm gonna call Sergeant Butler because whenever I call him, I get results. Like when I was at Africa, that was just my perspective. Like I don't know who does this, that, or the other, but every time I call Ray, I get results, and he remained that person through all of it. And again, he couldn't control getting his strike back, but he could control what he could control. And I sincerely believe that a lot of times, if you realize what's in your sphere of influence and you just keep doing that well, that starts to grow and there starts to become more things that you have power to make change to. But a lot of times we will give up and we won't even do the little things that are within our control, and we'll let that situation spiral out of control and break us and turn us into victims. Like, I can't help opportunities that I didn't get because somebody didn't like the color of my skin. But I promise you, every time they denied me for a silly reason, I did everything in my power to make sure it was beyond obvious that they made a terrible choice and that they knew that I was looking at them, and I was well aware that they was on some BS. You got to make it irrefutable. So now I love that example because you've got to be able to control the things that you can control because it's going to be so much that you can't. But if you handle what you can control, then at the end of the day, you don't have any excuses. You left it on the table.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And like you said, John, the crime is laying there. That's the crime. The crime is laying there. Get up, pull your pants up, pull your bootstraps up, whatever it is you got to do. Get up and take that next step forward. So you're absolutely right, bro. That's key. That's key.
Yeah, and and on top of everything else that's been stated by you, Ray, as well as John, I got to give you props to Ray because that was a great moment of vulnerability, which we have talked about ad nauseum over our 2 seasons. And that's something that, yeah, while we all may have known, the four of us were aware of, that's not something that obviously our audience was aware of. So the fact that you put that out there was just kind of again, a great moment of vulnerability, and you showing that it's not just a matter of us talking about vulnerability, but you're actually doing it as well. So I appreciate that, and kudos to you for that as well. But something else I thought about during that whole thing when you and John were talking was um I think about hearing my boy, which y'all always, well, people in general kind of give me this bromance hell about, but Marco My Hill, y'all know that's my dude, right? And with him, he referred to Howard Thurman's book, The Growing Edge, in which he talked about Jesus being on the cross, right? And by the way, if you're not religious or you don't believe in the Bible as it was translated, or whatever, don't cringe over this because that's not the point. The point that he was making was he was saying that the story of Jesus being on the cross is not just about the crucifixion, it's about the resurrection, right? And just as Jesus was not a prisoner to the events of the cross, we don't have to be prisoners to the events of our lives or reduce our dreams and aspirations to that of our immediate circumstance. Nor should we, right? How do we rewrite our story? How do we combat our history, and to a degree our present as well? And I think, first, as Black people, as Black men, um, and I don't want to paint this with a broad stroke here, but just saying, I think that we have to stop being held back by self-limiting beliefs. I think that too often over the course of our history in this country, we've allowed ourselves to kind of, I guess, let others, right, allow other people to dictate our destiny. Fear, failure, being told that you're less than, that you'll never amount to anything, and the list goes on and on and on. In the words of James Baldwin, if the world does it to you long enough and effectively enough, you begin to do it to yourself. You become a collaborator, an accomplice of your own murderers because you believe the same things they do, right? And so we oftentimes have allowed these negative tropes to become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that to me is unacceptable because it's essentially giving up. And you can't give up. You have to keep fighting. You have to control the things that you can actually control, right? And so I think for those reasons, we have to make sure that we're not embracing this notion of victimhood, right? Our ancestors, as a whole, they didn't accept victimhood. They fought through all the odds, right? And Lord knows there were plenty of odds that they had to fight to accomplish just to get us to be in the position that we're in right now. Now that, and you know what, I'll stop for now because I have some other things that I'll add on to that, I guess. But I want to give others an opportunity to talk. So I just wanted to put that out there while it was fresh on my mind.
Yeah. So that's a great point. I was thinking when you were talking, Kev, about all the things historically that people can go back to, and you can find something that would make you stop and take a really hard look at because of the blatantness of some of the acts, right? But even when you were talking about, yeah, things have done, what are you going to do about it, right?
Right.
You still have a choice at that point. And, we've talked, to ad nauseum, as you put it, about things like making good choices, uh, exhibiting discipline as a means to really achieve whatever it is you want in life. And one thing that I think today's generation has taught me was that if you put your mind to it and you're willing to work for it, there really are no limitations. Yeah, you might have to make some sacrifices, make some adjustments along the way. But today's generation, so I know y'all laugh at me about being the old guy on here, but I tell you, man, just watching young people move has taught me so much. You
Yes,
know,
sir.
almost made me wish I had another 20 years to go get it.
Yes, yes, they are getting it,
You
man.
know,
Yeah, man, I'm telling you.
yeah, because
Yes, yes,
yeah, because guess
That
what?
that that's why they say, Rod. That's why they say youth is wasted on the young, right? Because you don't really get all that until you
Right,
get older.
Right.
right,
You don't
right.
understand it. But yeah, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's a great point. You're right. Yeah, you
Yeah.
pour some wisdom into them, man, and the world better
Yes,
watch
sir.
out. Yeah, but no, I do. I stand in awe, just watching some of these young people and seeing how they think, and know that they're willing to forego buying a house,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Because they don't want to be tied down to anything. So
Yeah.
if an opportunity takes them to Egypt, they're going to Egypt, you
Yep.
know. So they're not limited in their thinking like maybe, my generation was, because we were trying to get to a place of providing stability for
Right.
our families and our, kids and loved ones or what have you. uh, that we were kind of risk averse, you
Right.
know. And I will tell you, my son asked me one day about that, blew my mind. But as he was asking, and as we talked through it, he's like, "Dad, do you think you took enough risk for our family?"
Hmm.
And I'm like, "Wow." Uh,
I'd have fell out my chair.
Yeah. 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 Right.
you know but when he asked it, what I like about it is that it drove a very genuine and open conversation, uh and I appreciated that. And so those are the
Absolutely.
moments that I live for nowadays, man, just to have real talk, with people you care about things that, hey,
Yes.
you know what, I learned over the year. I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or even last
A
year for
year
that
ago.
matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
And I think that's
And
one of the
shame on you
things.
if you are.
Right, right,
Right.
right.
You know.
And then shame on people for believing that others expect them to be, right, because a lot of times
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
people
Yes.
act a certain way because people expect them to be that way, you
Preach.
know so yeah. And so that's why I'm like, you know what, quit looking to the left and the right, and look inward, and
For
figure out
sure.
what it is that you need and what it is that you want. Be a dreamer,
Hmm.
and then make a decision, and then add some discipline to it.
For sure.
Yeah, I might have to copyright
Yeah. You see, John.
Yeah.
that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But at the end of
Oh
the day,
man.
though, we all have, a reason to feel like a victim. But at the end of the day, if you want to be a role model, if you want to set an example, you got to lead the way, and get past, the woe is me, you know, feelings that you might feel, and understand that, what, tomorrow's a new day, new opportunity. What you gonna do,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you,
Well, let
as
me
you were
let me jump
talking
in here.
to
Go
Rod,
ahead, Kev.
now, I was gonna say, as Rod was preaching and putting that wisdom out there, I was thinking, about this story that I had heard about Uganda's former president Idi Amin. Yeah, that Idi Amin, by the way. Um, and he had this friendship with a boxer, and this boxer who was really good, he had a couple of losses. And those losses that he had they came by decision, and they were by like a point or two. And this boxer attributed those losses to biased judges, and those biased judges were white in every instance. And Idi Amin asked him after he heard him kind of complaining about this. He said to him, in those matches, and not his exact words, but this is what he was saying. In those matches, why did you leave it up to the judges to decide your fate? And the guy's like, what? And he's like, had you knocked him out, you would have
Hmm.
taken it out of the hands of the judges. And so now, of course, we know that kind of oversimplifies the matter a bit, because had he been able to knock them out, he would have, right? So
Right.
again, it kind of oversimplifies it a bit, but there's a lesson in that, right? And victimhood gives your power away. And what could he have done, right? In when he lost those couple of matches, he could have trained more. He could have done certain things that maybe would have given him a better opportunity to maybe knock some guys out later on, to not have these white judges kind of control his destiny. But again, um, the point there is you have to do things right that increase your chances of attaining your goals in life. Don't give away your power. If there's anything that you can control yourself, going back to what Ray talked about and what John said about Ray, right? Ray didn't have the ability to get his own strike back, but he did the things that were within his control to ensure that he could, or at least to maximize his chances of getting his strike back, in which he did. And so by playing victim and just saying "woe is me," you are giving away your power. Don't give away your power, right? Keep your own power. Don't play victim. Do what you can to attain your goals, to control your own destiny. So I wanted to put that out there because I was thinking about that as you were talking, Ray. I mean, the last thing you want to do is go to your grave thinking you were dealt a bad hand, when in fact you were just a prisoner of your own mind the whole time, right? Without the courage to kind of see the situation as it was. So
Yeah, and what I was gonna say is, when Rod made the statement about, talking with his son, and those are the moments he lives for nowadays, and that really hit home with me. Like I just got back from Ohio this morning. I spent the past 4 days with my daughter, and she and I went for a walk yesterday, and I was getting ready to ask her a question, and she asked me the very question I was about to ask her. So it just led us down a path of conversation that I really appreciated. And Rob, when you talked about having those conversations with your son, and those are the moments you live for, man, that struck a chord with me, because that's what I'm living for now. And then Kevin, to your point, and we're talking about, we've talked about the things I went through to get my strike back. Something that popped into my head, and I know a lot of probably most of our viewers can relate to, is the movie Why Did I Get Married? I think about Jill Scott's character, how she would talk negatively about herself because her former husband would talk negative about her. So she decided, I'm just going to beat him to the punch so it won't hurt as much. But then the person that she ended up marrying, who loved her for who she was, said to her, if you're not happy with with your appearance or how you are, do something about it and change it. And that's what we're trying to talk about right now. If you're not happy with the way things are running in your life right now, stop playing the victim and do something to change it. So I just wanted to make sure I jumped in there, because that moment in that movie just came to me.
yeah, good stuff. Yeah.
I'll jump up. Hey, so since no, since when we're talking about staving off the victim mentality, I think a great question to jump in and address is, what are some things that we advise that we can have a personal testimony about that can help someone to stave off that victim mentality, to reestablish a position of responsibility instead of a position of somebody else did this to me, and kind of establish that ethos that despite what might be going on, or there's something that I can do. And one of the things that in the workplace, what I would really encourage people to do is, they'd have an idea, or, there's a course of action that they want to see through. And, oh, well, I don't have the ability to do this. I don't have this. And every time I try to do this, like if you listen to people talk, you will hear where their block is. They'll be like,
Yep.
well, if I try this happened last time. And, but it's so emotional for them that they can't get out of that place. And so what I would advise people to do, I'd say, hey, and this is something I do for myself, you know, come on, let's go ahead to the whiteboard. Let's write down all of the steps and processes. Let's get them out of your mind and out of your heart and out of your emotions. And let's just put them right there in front of you. Take all of that emotion out. So you're looking at black and white to see what's really ahead of you. Because I sincerely believe that a lot of time that victim mentality is an emotional response to something that has happened to us. And so we've got that thing on autopilot repeat. And we continue to repeat this story to ourselves that this is the outcome that's going to happen every time I try this, because one time I tried it and this was the outcome I got. And you keep telling yourself that when it's absolutely not necessarily true. So that's something I personally lead people to do is, hey, let's put it on paper, put it on the whiteboard, but get it out of your mind and put it right there in front of you so you can see it. Sans all of the emotions that you have this idea wrapped up in.
But were you done, brother?
Yeah.
I am.
Oh, yeah. So no, that's a great point. Uh, and one of the things that come to mind is so what does the signs of victim mentality look like? Right? Because I think a lot of times people don't even recognize that they might have a victim mentality. Uh, and I always say knowing and understanding, is kind of the first step to changing that. If you do, you know, operate on a daily basis with a victim's mentality. Uh, and so one of the things that I did also want to just mention is that the primary root cause, based on things I've read, and then just watching it manifest itself, it comes from betrayal of trust. Uh, uh, and so when you think about how many people have had their trust betrayed by someone that they loved unconditionally, gave it to freely, as people will say, I gave you my whole heart, and then I had to watch you walk all over it. So now I don't know about y'all, but you have that happen to you once, you know, let alone twice or a third time. You might not be able to find your way back. Save for a bunch of therapy, right? So I just like to say, what can we offer up to those that might be watching, uh, as possible solutions to overcome uh, that betrayal of trust that may have happened in their lives, or any sort of trauma that might have sent them spiraling out of control. Uh, because if it happens to you early, and think about the number of people that have been responsible for watching kids who weren't their parents. Uh, I mean, it's almost like we place our own loved ones in position to be victimized, you know, and then think little of them when they say, well, something happened, or you see or notice something different about them. Uh, and they say, well, so and so did XYZ to me, when you were working and left me at their house. And, I'm gonna believe a kid over an adult. And that's typically the way that it seemed to have happened. Uh, and this is just stories that I've been, told about. So how do we help people get past any sort of trauma that takes them down that road of feeling victimized, and not being able to take back control, right? Because that's what it is. Take back your own power, uh, instead of letting a circumstance or something from the past continue to control you. in the course of your life for years to come. And I'll turn it over.
Yeah, I think, we have to. I was watching. There's this, and I know I sent it to John, and John, I think you follow her, but there's this, there's probably, I have like a top five, I think, of people that I just love, and I'm searching them out every day on Instagram, right? And one of those people, she may be at the top of the list for me, and that's Alexi Panos. She's incredible. She has done so much of the shadow work and working on herself, and she's just amazing to me. But just today, she was talking about being conscious of your stuff, right? And with that, a lot of times people think that there's this certain awareness that we have, but we really don't, because we fear it. And it has to be, you really have to be aware of your stuff, of your patterns, of your shortcomings, of all these different things, um, to to be able to put in that work to get you where you think you might need to go. I kind of lost my train of thought, to be honest with you, as I was talking through this, but but I think it takes a certain level of self, of that shadow work that we talked about in the past, and being aware of what is going on within you, and not fearing any sort of hurts, any sort of traumas that may have, yeah, it could be tough to deal with, no question about it, right? We know that trauma and hurt is not an easy thing. They are not easy things to have to deal with and overcome. But you have to be aware of it. You have to really do the work to recognize it and want to do something about it, to change it, to get you where you want to go. And I kind of lost, again, I lost my train of thought just a little bit, so I'll turn it over. But I hope I at least addressed a little bit of what you were saying, Rod. I wish I hadn't kind of lost my train, but whatever.
No, no, it's all good. And, and that's a great point because there are people that have done the work. And I think that's one of the beautiful
Yeah,
things about today's society and access to information on any topic. If you
yeah,
can't get information on anything that you might be going through to help you through something, it's because you have not grasped the ability to go and search for it
uh,
because it's out there. I'm in awe regarding YouTube. I mean, dude, it's nothing that goes wrong in the house. If I want to know how to fix it,
YouTube
yes,
University.
yes, sir.
Yeah, man.
so one thing that this generation has, and of course we're in the, I shouldn't say the middle, but we're in the information age anyway. But
Yeah,
access to information is just readily available. Uh, so you can get it if you want it. And again, it goes back to if you want to stave off that victim mentality, then want something different for yourself. And you be willing to do everything within your power to change that circumstance or situation that you might be in. But you have the ability at your fingertips, you know,
yeah,
as I always told my sons, you walk around with that phone in your hand. So I know you have access to a lot of
right.
information as
Hmm.
well as a calendar.
Yeah,
So don't forget
yeah.
my birthday to tell me, oh, I forgot your birthday. Put it in your calendar. And yeah, of course, they didn't forget my birthday, but I've heard people say that, oh, yeah, I forgot your birthday. Well, put it in your calendar. It'll remind you,
Absolutely.
put an alert on it.
And switch it to annual. Switch it
Right.
to every year.
Right?
Yeah. And if you want to know how old somebody is, try to get it once, and then add the year in. to their
Yeah,
birthday.
yep, yep,
So,
yep. Because I
Mhm.
do that.
Yeah, just get some clues when they be talking about when they was in high school. Like, what was the popular
Yeah,
movie out
yeah.
back then?
mhm.
Yep,
Like,
yep,
they'll
yep.
slip eventually.
Yeah. Oh, you must have finished in '95.
Yeah.
No. It was '94. It was '94.
Close. I was close. I was close. Right? Yeah. I have to
Yeah.
put years in my calendar. John's easy for me because he's the same age as Felicia, so I won't forget his age. Being the same age as my wife. But yeah, most people I have to put in a year.
I
That is
just be
for
out here like
sure.
y'all grown, so we good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Y'all not counting birthdays anyway.
Right. But in going to something that you said, right? I think back to something I said as well, where I think a lot of times as black people, as black men, we buy in. And I know I'm repeating this, but I think it's worth repeating. These self-limiting beliefs that's based on self-fulfilling prophecy, right? We hear these things in the media, right? We read these statistics and all of this stuff, and I truly, truly, with all my heart, believe that this is done intentionally, right? As part of the machine, right? As part of that thing that they do to try to keep you down, right? For lack of a better word, but the situation, while it is dire in a lot of situations, is not as dire as they would have you believe. You have to know that you are more than what they expect of you. And you have to understand, too, that a lot of the things that they state are not true. Be aware of who you are. Like, I think about the fact that the news always portrays us, and by us, obviously, I'm talking about like people and black men as these people who are, you know, we're riddled by crime, riddled with unemployment and poverty, and poverty is just endemic to black people, right? Where the truth is, yes, there are a lot of pockets, there are a lot of situations where we fall, victim to some of this stuff, but it's not as bad as they would portray it all the time. I think about the fact that in 1960, right? I read this stat that in 1960, 41% of black men, not even talking black people in general, but black men were impoverished. Almost half of black men were impoverished in 1960, whereas and I think this stat had was from 2000 or from 2019, maybe 2020. But the fact is that stat has fallen to where it's like 16% of black men in this country now fall below the poverty line, right? And so just stats like that, where they put it out there like it's this particular number, and then it again it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like, well, damn, you know, that's the way this has always been. Yeah, we've made a modicum. There's been a little bit of advancement, but at the same time, there's not been much. And this is just who we are. No, this is not who we are, right? And even if that was the case, that still doesn't have to be who you are. But that's not even who we are as a people. Those stats they put out there are not even necessarily true. We are so much more than what they would have you believe. So please eliminate these self-limiting beliefs that you have of not only you as a person, but as us, but for us as a people, and make yourself more. Make yourself more. That wasn't as eloquently stated as I would like it to have been, but hopefully you got the point. uh,
Yeah. And no, that's a great point. And and again, that's how you take back your power.
yeah,
You know, take back the control. And I would tell you, for me, I think it's one of the reasons why, and of course, aside from from traveling with you good brothers around the country to different places and different parts of this country that that afforded us the opportunity to meet people from all over. I mean, just
Yeah.
knowing someone from every state, for instance, and the things that we were able to learn, about their experiences, about their culture, their
Yeah.
upbringing. Been able to share those stories. Uh, huge, huge, huge uh, growth opportunities, and one of the things that I really cherish about having been blessed enough to do that work and to meet those people. But I go back to basic training. When I was the dorm chief and sat with a young lady from Iowa. Uh, and Lord knows I'm gonna have to go back and look up her name. I can't quite remember now. It's been a couple years ago. But
That's
I'll
no problem.
never, you know, but I'll never forget the impact that she had on me and my thinking. She was from Iowa and grew up on a farm. And sitting there having breakfast, lunch, and dinner with me every day for those 6 weeks, and that being the first time that she had ever sat down and spoken to an African American was powerful, you
Yeah.
know. And we learned quite a bit about one another, and hopefully, she left with a different perspective than the one she came with, and I consider us to be pretty good friends by the time she graduated. Plus, your cousins and them were giving her third D. You know what? Oh my goodness, the
Uh,
story she told me they were giving her over there in that sister flight. She was like, "Oh my goodness!" She's like, "Are they just naturally aggressive and angry?" I'm like, I don't know about who you're in the dorm with, but yeah, we're all kind of a product of our environments and upbringings, and you never know uh, what stuff we're dealing with that we haven't quite worked out. But
well, I can assure you, bro, she left with a different impression after conversing with you because you have a way of doing that. So,
I don't know. It was a good time though. I tell you, and I would tell you, I think that of course, and we've talked about this before too. It just seems to be a lack of empathy in the world today, uh, because I think if you stopped and try to walk in someone else's shoes for just a little while, you realize that okay, it's a different experience than maybe the one I had, and they're probably going through things that I may or may not have, but of course things impact people differently, you know, based on their ability to be prepared to deal with it. I think back to The Help and Viola Davis's character and how she, would sit with that little white girl and tell her about how important she was, and just pour into her all those positive things, and like wow, so you might think of her as the help, but what she's doing for your kid, you can't even put a price on, you know, and so I think that we probably need to encourage people to just if they don't practicing positive affirmations can be a good thing. The more and more you say it and believe it, you'll see it becoming true. So anyway, it's probably way off topic, but it is one idea to kind of stave off that victim mentality, and again take back the power and control of your own destiny, which you certainly have some say in. So,
Two quick things I'm going to say real quick is one, that was a great transition, Rod, when you talked about the experience of traveling, of us all traveling together around the country. And it's a great transition into our next episode, which obviously is about the importance of travel. But also something else you mentioned, and this isn't to contradict you per se, it's just to put another perspective out there. But when you talked about putting yourself in another person's shoes, right? I think about something that Brene Brown said, which I loved. And she talked about how we can't actually walk in another person's shoes. It just can't be done. And that we shouldn't even try. But, because you don't, the fact of the matter is, a white person doesn't have, or you know what? I won't even put it that way. As a white person, someone else may not have my privilege around my education, around my race, around the resources that I might have access to, right? And to try to put yourself in someone else's shoes can oftentimes cause pain. But instead of putting ourselves in someone else's shoes and guessing what they're feeling, the other thing that we should do, the replacement, what we should do, which most people do not do, unfortunately, and it's not revolutionary as Brene put it, but it can be hard, is to listen. Listen, right? When someone tells you what their experiences are, right? What it's like to be in their shoes, listen to them and believe them, right? That does not mean to try to reconcile it with our own experiences, but listen to them, respect it, try to understand it as best we can, not necessarily putting ourselves in their shoes, but again, just understanding it and listening and try understanding something from another person's perspective. And I think that is so important. So I'm glad that you brought that up. I really am. But I just
yeah,
wanted to throw that out there while I was thinking about it.
yeah, great point. Appreciate it,
Yeah.
Well,
brother
I'll
Ray.
I'll hop in real quick. Yeah, I was gonna hop in real quick before you could call on my name there, brother Rod. but what I was gonna say, what I wanted to say is, one thing that we can all do, find somebody that you see is making a positive impact. You know, ask them questions. How did you never, like you said, you never know what somebody's background is, but if you listen to them, ask them questions. Okay, well, how did you overcome this? How did you overcome that? Is there anything that you can recommend that I do that can help me get to closer to where you are and possibly reach where you are or exceed where you are? Something that we talk about a lot: seek counseling. Seek counseling. Talk to somebody, about what you're going through, because again, somebody said, I think it was Rod that was talking about believing, if a child tells you something or have you, believe that child, or at least investigate at the very least, because there are people out here, young kids, teenagers, what have you, being molested, and then they go and tell somebody and nobody believes them. you know if nothing else, find somebody. You keep telling your story, keep it out there, because eventually someone is going to believe you, and hopefully you will get some relief for what you're going through. But definitely seek some counseling, because again, having someone to talk to, if it's even if it's a good peer, a very good friend, somebody is going to have your back. You talk to that friend, and because they're going to be solid with you and they're going to keep it real with you. But you just definitely have to talk it out, because we can't just keep accepting blame for things that may be happening to us, and then going and living with it, or living in that victim mentality. So that's the couple things that I had. I guess I'll call on John this time, since Rod called on me.
No, we have relinquished your calling on people Um,
Privileges, his cards have
privileges,
been
they are
revoked.
gone. They're revoked. You no longer can call on anyone. I am going to edit that right up out of there. Ray ain't calling on no one.
Oh man.
No, that's a good point. Just I don't know if I've said it on this platform. I've said it on others, but I am a survivor of sexual molestation and abuse. And one of the things, Rob was talking about that earlier. Some of the things that happen in family. I think it's important to get to a place where, because in a lot of those victim situations, one of the hardest things to break that cycle or that thought pattern is that, especially when it's a close family member or caretaker or somebody in your circle that's responsible for you, it's hard to break free from that relationship. I see so many people that have like these troubled relationships with parents, but how do you break away from that? And so as long as you still love your parent, but your parent abused you, neglected you, or let you down in some major foundational way, um, and so it's almost like you're having to relive. And one of the things, and I know it's hard, but you know, um, Kevin was talking about something I learned from her, and I don't know if they still together, but I think her boo Preston, but Lexi Panos, she talks about
Yes, man.
sometimes you have to separate yourself from people that it's not normal to have to separate yourself from, and that could be family, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of times with that trauma, realize that when it's a trauma, when it's a situation that has put you in a space where you've been victimized, is that you have to prioritize breaking away from that as much as you can. Like
Right.
obviously in some situations you can't, and you got to prioritize that regardless of what the relationship is. Like there's some family members like, yeah, we can, but we ain't friends. We like
Right.
they blocked. I don't accept calls. Like they're not a part of my life anymore. And I think that's some, and it's a lot of hard stuff. Like staving off the victim mentality is not an easy lift. We're not at
Yeah.
all suggesting
Right.
that, but
Right.
it's a process that is definitely worth it. So I'm not gonna pass it to anybody specific. I'm just gonna
Mhm.
throw it up, and whoever catch it, catch it.
Yeah. So, that's a great point you
Yeah.
bring up. Uh, so staving off the victim mentality, it, it becomes necessary if you're to live, as fulfilling a life as you were intended to live. And that's just the reality of it all. And back to what John was saying, about sometimes being able to break away uh, from things or people or relationships, that quite honestly the other person or other people believe that they're entitled to have because of relationship that you were born into. And the reality of it is that, most people are probably happier with the family that they pick themselves and choose to surround themselves
Yeah,
with than
for sure.
those that they're born into. And it's unfortunately in a lot of ways, and it doesn't mean that you don't have love for your family. You
Right.
know, it just means that sometimes, you know, if people have not grown to the point where you've grown to and understand that, relationship is both give and take and not necessarily 50-50.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Let the Obamas know about that. They'll let you know. But it doesn't have to be, right? Because someone could be okay with 70-30. Because I can be
Right.
happy if I'm on the 30% end, you know, because it might not take as much for me as it might, my mate.
Right.
So really it's just about, being in a place where you feel comfortable and where you're able to thrive as well. So but that's a great point, and I think that's part of the conversation as well. I have to do XYZ because my kinfolk need me to do XYZ,
Yeah.
but they're the ones that made all those horrible choices with their opportunity,
Mhm.
right? So now they can't
Yeah.
require you to sacrifice because of their bad choices, but you have to have, be able to have real conversations about that, you know. And so, for instance, if we're brothers, and I make choices, you make choices, Ray make choices, Kev, John, and somebody makes bad choices, like repeatedly, you know, and we might say something to them, and then one of us might say something twice, maybe, but they ain't gonna say nothing too many more times past two.
Nope.
They're gonna be like, you can talk to him if you want to,
Right.
but I
Right.
ain't
Right.
talking to him no more.
I'm out.
Yeah.
I talked to him once. I was clear. I even gave him
Oh
another
man.
one, and they choose to still make terrible choices. I'm out.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I
Hey, it
love
is
them.
what it is.
I love them, but
Yep.
the choices they
Yeah.
make. You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
and so, but we have to be
Yeah.
okay with letting people operate in the space that they choose to operate in. Plain and
Yeah.
simple. I'm not mad about it, you know. And I'll share this, and then I'll turn the floor over. So I grew up with a first cousin who I love beyond. He was my brother. 10 months apart. You know, shared the same room for a while. Uh, but early on, we were close, but we never really hung in the same circles outside of the schoolyard in North Philly. And so I remember going to see him at Gratisford Prison in Philadelphia. Me and
Mhm.
my grandmother ushering up there. I will never forget the sounds of those gates closing behind me.
Man.
And I
Man.
could not leave when I wanted to at that point. The first thing I said to him when I saw him, bruh, I love you, but you don't ever have to worry about seeing me in here again. You might like coming in here when you
Right.
can't leave when you want to.
Right.
I don't want to
Yeah.
do that. And I don't want you to do it. But I respect the fact that you make your own choices. But I'm just telling you, I'm not coming and I'm not letting grandma come. Not doing it, not putting her through it. So decide what you want to do. Uh, and I mean, even to this day, I love the dude to pieces. And he was always a good dude. And for the longest time, I never really understood, why he kept finding himself in those situations. But anyway, even in that, he still has an opportunity to control his own destiny going forward. So it doesn't matter what happened to us in the past. Take back the power and control. Work within the parameters and the framework you're given, or reimagine it.
Yeah.
As long as you stay out of jail. uh,
Yeah.
but and sometimes, you know what? Dr. King even showed you sometimes you might have to go to jail. But
Right.
reimagine what success could be uh, for you and for what you believe in along your journey. So, and with that, I'll turn it over.
One of the things I love about this episode is it took such a different direction than what I expected, right? And we talk about not having expectations. My wife and I, she's always saying that's why you shouldn't have expectations, and she's right. And I try not to, but sometimes it's difficult. Anyway, like in my mind, when I talked about when we discussed this, I automatically went to the place of kind of our thing with the white man holding us down, right? And like
Hmm.
slavery and all the different things that kind of have put us in this place where we have to break the mold of being victims. But I love the fact that we took this thing from so many, we picked it apart from so many different angles, right? And just like I gave Ray kudos for being vulnerable. John, kudos to you too, man. I mean,
Absolutely.
putting that out there, the sexual
Absolutely.
assault that's yeah, I don't that's vulnerability on vulnerability for sure. Um, but we talked about things from sexual assault to someone not doing their job and losing a stripe to Rod just talked about his cousin going to prison. All these different angles, and I absolutely love the fact that we took it from so many different angles. That's what this is all about. But for me, and this is going to be my final word on it, and I'm going to bring it back to the perspective that I actually had on it. And I kind of started this thing off, at least started my part off talking about how, we've kind of had capitalism and slavery and Jim Crow and mass incarceration thrust on us. And that's not, our fault, but it's our responsibility to kind of, move on beyond that. But what I want to do, my final word on this is to state this that does not mean when I said that or anything that I've stated about this, moving on beyond victimhood, none of that means that we shouldn't have a critique of and speak up and out against racism and discrimination, right? It doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue fighting for equality, for equity, not only for ourselves, but all marginalized groups. What it does mean is that we cannot sit back and aspire to watching television all day, right? Or low income jobs or just being impoverished or living an impoverished existence simply because we think this is what we've been relegated to, right? Do not acquiesce to the expectation of being less than. We have a say. Going back to that Idi Amin story that I told again, while that may have been an oversimplification, there was a point in that. We have a say in how our lives turn out individually as well as a community. And those are my final words.
I'll jump in real quick just to piggyback on what you said, Kev. It's like, I've got, and there's nothing wrong with people that are on welfare when you need help, but
Absolutely.
I have several family members. I'm not going to call their names. They know who they are, and if they don't like it, oh well, I don't give a damn. But when you decide to sit on your behind and just say, well, you know what, they're gonna give me free money to sit here and do nothing. Shame on you. Shame on you. I had a relative that for all of my life, and I'm 55. I've got 51 years of memories. I can't remember this dude ever working a job a day in his life in 51 years of memories. But this person decided he was going to go file for Social Security. What? You ain't paid a dime into the system. You ain't worked a day in. You ain't worked a day in your life, but you gonna go try and file for Social Security because you're trying to get some more free money? Man, look, we are products of our own environment. You can choose to do better, or you can choose to stay where you're at. And a lot of folks have chosen to stay where they're at because they're comfortable. I chose not to be comfortable. You guys chose not to be comfortable. And again, you guys are more family to me. I will tell you guys I love you before I will tell someone that is actually blood relative to me that I love them, because I respect you and love you guys because of who you are, because of what you do, because of what you stand for. But having folks like that, your product, you took the lazy way out. You took the lazy man and lazy woman's way out. And I'm sorry, I have nothing for you. So like when Rod said he, loved his cousin, and he was never going back to that prison again. That's how I have a lot of family. All blood ain't family to me. I have people, again, friends. I say I love you too before I even go, and I will go visit before I will go visit people that are actually blood relatives of mine. So again, if you're not happy with the way things are in your life, do something to change the circumstances. Do something to make the change. But if you're not going to do that, then you just stay where you're at. And I'm done, fellas.
Is that it? Anybody any other final words, or we good with that? All right. So with that, we want to thank each of you for taking the time to join us as we wrap up this week's episode. I want to leave you with a quote by author Stephanie LaHart, who said, "Dear Black males, always remember to hold your head up high and never doubt who you are. Believe in yourself so much that other people's negative words, opinions, and energies won't discourage or hinder you. Until next time, peace."